Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
We're going to ensure that the Americans understand how pissed off we are.
BC's premier urges Ottawa not to lift tariffs on the U.S. until Donald Trump takes levies off the table. More on the pauses and pledges. Plus,
we've been to Vancouver before to go on a cruise.
We go to Canada all the time.
How will the cross-border fight affect tourism here? Businesses wait and hope.
A lot of people from US, they come here, they love Canada, but there's a sense of chaos.
And
we were definitely in the unknown land and we didn't know what was going to happen.
Relief and frustration. The province says it will pay to rebuild a Port Coquitlam school destroyed by a suspicious fire.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. In a week of whiplash developments from the White House about trade, there is yet another temporary pause. U.S. President Donald Trump has delayed those punishing levies on Canadian goods for 1 month. Megan Fitzpatrick reports from Washington.
Between now and April 2nd, this makes it much more favorable for our American car manufacturers.
Another twist in the North American tariff war today. In the Oval Office this afternoon, President Donald Trump signed an executive order that essentially paused some of the tariffs he imposed 2 days ago on Canada and Mexico. For goods that fall under the existing trade agreement between the three countries, they'll now be exempt until April 2nd. Goods that don't fall within that deal are still subject to the tariffs.
It's just a modification short term because I didn't want to hurt the American. It would have hurt the American car companies if I did that.
Earlier in the day, Trump announced on social media that he was giving Mexico the 1 month break. Trump wrote he was doing so out of respect for President Claudia Sheinbaum and said they were working hard together to stop illegal immigration and drugs from coming across the border. Trump initially proposed the tariffs as punishment for failing to tighten the border, though his administration has also expressed other reasons for using tariffs, like wanting to generate more domestic manufacturing. Trump's praise for Sheinbaum was in contrast to what he wrote about Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, laying blame on him for the tariffs and saying he's done a terrible job for Canada. Trump and Trudeau had a heated phone call Wednesday, and afterwards Trump said he wasn't satisfied with Canada's efforts to stop fentanyl from getting into the U.S. But he's facing backlash for his tariff policy and for the retaliatory tariffs Canada has imposed as a result on products like Kentucky bourbon.
Almost every industry in Kentucky has come to me and said it will hurt our industry and push up prices of homes, cars. And so I'm going to continue to argue against tariffs.
Trump is still set to impose tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum next week, and yet another round of tariffs are set for April 2nd on trading partners around the world, which means there are still weeks of uncertainty ahead. Megan Fitzpatrick, CBC News, Washington.
The BC government, meanwhile, wants to send a message to America. It says it will be ready to charge commercial trucks fees en route to Alaska. Premier David Eby says new legislation will allow the government to take faster action in response to Trump's tariffs against Canada. And as Mira Baines reports, he doesn't want Ottawa to let up.
Trucks crossing the U.S.-Canada border through BC to Alaska could be facing extra fees in the future. While Premier David Eby has mentioned the idea before, this time he's taking serious action. The province will be tabling a new law that allows the government to take strong countermeasures in response to U.S. tariffs.
It'll be one tool among a number of tools that enables us to respond to escalations from the American side. It will not be implemented immediately, but we will have it available if it's required.
He didn't go into detail about how the trucking fees will be applied or how much they will be. If passed, the legislation will also remove internal trade barriers.
Just yesterday, ministers announced an agreement to ensure that liquor products from BC wineries, distilleries, and breweries can ship freely to consumers across Canada.
The press conference coincided with another big development from the Oval Office. U.S. President Trump announced he's pausing 25% tariffs on some Canadian goods until April 2nd.
Just a modification short term because I didn't want to hurt the American. It would have hurt the American car companies if I did that.
So far, the province has taken U.S. alcohol off shelves in BC liquor stores and implemented a Buy Canada First policy for government procurement. The opposition says that the province hasn't gone far enough.
We have barriers in this country that are the equivalent of a 23% tariff on British Columbia. Tear these things down, quit with all the virtue signaling, and actually do the right thing for British Columbians.
UBC professor of economics Werner Antweiler believes BC is taking the right approach.
The idea here is to show the other side that we are ready, that we are willing to take action.
He says fees on commercial trucks traveling through are common in European countries. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
And as relations between Canada and the U.S. remain tense, local tours in Vancouver are bracing themselves for changes in where tourists who come to see them are coming from. Pinky Wong reports.
This horse carriage has been taking tourists around Vancouver's Stanley Park since the 1980s. Given the current Canada-U.S. tension, some Canadians have decided not to travel down south of the border. But some tourists from the U.S. do not seem to be changing their travel plans.
We've been to Vancouver before to go on a cruise, and my husband comes up here to Ontario and goes fishing every year, 2 and 3 times a year. So we still will.
3 weeks this year.
Yeah, 3 weeks we'll come up here and go fishing.
Banff in September.
Yeah, we still will come to Banff
and we go to Canada all the time.
Jerry O'Neill with the horse-drawn tour says 65 to 70% of his customers are from the States, including California, New York, and Florida.
We always got to get ready for the unexpected. You know, I think a lot of people from US, they come here, they love Canada, you know, but there's a sense of chaos.
He says it is still early to tell if they need to adjust their operation accordingly.
Maybe less staff, less taxes that we pay to the government, less rent that we pay. You know, it's hard to say right now. Unfortunately, we have some fixed costs that we can't change.
Another local tour that relies heavily on American tourists is the foodie tour. The founder describes Vancouver as a gateway to Asian cuisine.
Americans and international travelers to really experience the best of Asian cuisine, and coupled with the fresh produce and seafood, as well as livestock that we're really known for here in Vancouver. Really the best of both worlds.
She says the dip in our currency may also contribute to attracting American tourists.
It's really weakens the Canadian dollars, which makes our products and services more affordable, which is a great thing. At the same time, there's changing dynamics between U.S. and Canada as well.
Small business owners are saying it is currently low season for the tourism industry right now, so it remains to be seen if and how the tariffs would impact them when it comes to American tourist numbers. Pinky Wong, CBC News, Vancouver.
We have a new warning about measles to tell you. Fraser Health says a new case of the highly contagious disease has been confirmed on the Lower Mainland, the 3rd case since mid-February. Like the first 2, authorities say the person infected traveled to Southeast Asia, but is not believed to be linked to the earlier cases. The health authority warns people may have been exposed to measles if they were in the emergency department of Royal Columbian Hospital from 2:30 p.m. on Monday to 2:30 a.m. on Tuesday. Measles is highly infectious and spreads through the air. Fraser Health notes most people in Canada will be immune because they've been vaccinated or had the disease. The measles vaccine is free for many people. Canadian Olympian turned alleged drug kingpin Ryan Wedding is now on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. And the reward to find him has been up to $10 million US. For information leading to his arrest, Wedding competed for Canada as a snowboarder at the 2002 Olympics in Utah. He faces charges related to 3 murders, cocaine trafficking, and running what's called a criminal enterprise. Authorities believe he is in Mexico. Tensions within BC's official opposition appear to be rising. One BC Conservative MLA says members of her own caucus are better suited for the NDP, while the party's House leader slammed those comments as a distraction from the ongoing trade war with the U.S. More now from Katie DeRosa.
A meeting of the BC Conservative Caucus devolved into a shouting match, exposing more divisions within the official government opposition over residential schools. Things got so heated, some MLAs stormed out, according to some people inside the meeting. One of the issues is a video which features Conservative Attorney General critic Dallas Brody. Brody appeared on a podcast which was posted on YouTube earlier this week. In it, Brody slammed her Conservative colleague, Alia Warbus, saying she's aligned with the NDP.
There's a person in our party who's Indigenous, and she, was super angry and went to town and joined the NDP to call me out. We've actually brought in some people who, I'm just going to say this, I think belong in the NDP.
This after Warbus criticized Brody over her social media post about the former Kamloops Indian Residential School, which First Nations leaders said amounted to residential school denial. Warbus, a member of the Stolo First Nation, says Brody is causing a distraction for the party in the midst of a trade war and record budget deficit.
And that's what she wants to go marching out to stand for, is abhorrent to me and is causing division. And we need to address the division within the caucus and get on the same page as a team. And if we cannot do that, then I do not know why I came here.
The head of the Métis Nation of BC reached out to CBC News to say he met with Brody after the initial social media post and outlined the harm it caused. Walter Minot, whose grandparents attended residential school, says Brody apologized. Upon seeing the latest video, however,
I was appalled. I was devastated.
He called for Brody to be removed from caucus.
I'd just like to state to Rustad and his party to let them know, how hurtful these comments are, to all our people out there. They should be calling for her resignation.
It's unclear if Rustad will do that. Brody declined to speak to media today. This is just the latest dust-up inside the BC Conservative Party, a coalition of longtime Conservatives and more centrist MLAs who joined the party following the collapse of BC United. Despite Rustad insisting free speech is good for a political party, it's increasingly causing these internal divisions that spill into the public eye. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
A school in Port Coquitlam that was destroyed by a suspicious fire 17 months ago will finally be rebuilt. But as Chad Pawson reports, the good news comes with some frustration in the community.
This is what was left of a beloved school, Port Coquitlam's Hazel Trembath Elementary, after a suspicious fire leveled it.
To lose all of that has been really traumatic. So it's been a very, very difficult time for the community.
Port Coquitlam Mayor Brad West went to this school, so did his son at the time of the fire. It happened overnight, no one was injured. The school's destruction spurred the community to push hard for a rebuild as fast as possible. 300 families have been forced to take their children to an alternate site for classes in the meantime.
Although we've had so many promises, there was also people saying, oh, it's not going to get rebuilt or the land's going to get sold. We were definitely in the unknown land and we didn't know what was going to happen.
Now, 17 months later, news the community has been waiting for: provincial funds to rebuild. Thrilled to announce, says School District Chair Michael Thomas, confirming funding from the province will replace the school. But it comes with controversy. The brand new BC budget listed K-12 school upgrades or replacements. Hazel Trembath wasn't among them. That led Brad West to threaten pressure tactics to get the job done.
If the province is failing this community, maybe they should collect the school taxes on their own and not depend on us to do it. So, those types of things to try and, really hold their feet to the fire.
Brad West and his community want to know why this process was so difficult and fraught with poor communication. Regardless, they are pleased that Hazel Trembath will rise again. The province has yet to release a timeline for the rebuild. In the meantime, the RCMP continues to investigate how this fire started. They say it was human-caused. Chad Pawson, CBC News, Vancouver.
Darius Mandavi joins us with a look at the weather, and you have a phrase that raises the hair on some people's necks.
That's right. The low pressure system coming into the northwest doesn't really tell the full story here. For that, we have to zoom out a bit because there's a stream of moisture coming into the province. This is an atmospheric river, but it is a low-level one. So if we're talking the amount of moisture coming in, this is actually sort of good moisture. This is good for the province because we have low levels of snowpack. We've had a very dry February and beginning of March, or actually dry last few months. So this is good news coming in, but there will be heavy rain at times, so be aware of that. We're seeing some cloud moving now. Parts of the north coast are getting some rain, and it will come to the south coast. We'll have the totals for you later in the show, Dan.
Sounds good. Thanks, Darius.
Thank you.
It's an alleged scam running from the slopes of Whistler all the way to Burnaby. More on how a Lower Mainland man is accused of trying to trick ski shops out of equipment that he then tried to sell online. You'll want to see this. Police in Surrey are trying to piece together a two-vehicle crash that has left one person dead. The SBS says it happened early Thursday morning near Highway 10 and 144th Street. Police say first responders tried to save a person in one of those vehicles, but they died at the scene. Another was taken to hospital with serious injuries. You can see a truck on its side there. It's not yet clear what caused the crash. BC has signed a 4-year pharmacare deal with the federal government for $670 million, giving universal access to contraceptives, diabetes medications and devices, and hormone replacement therapy to treat symptoms of menopause.
The rising cost of living can create very difficult choices for people, but health should never be something that people have to compromise on. Nobody should have to choose between putting food on the table or accessing medications that they need to live a healthy life.
Coverage for the program starts in March of 2026. One UBC health policy researcher argues while the announcement is welcome news, it's not sustainable nor cohesive.
This kind of patchwork of providing Ontario enough money to cover their drug plan, BC enough money to cover their drug plan is going to lead to a very big one. We need a national formulary which has an essential list of medications that everybody in Canada can access. And for national pharmacare to be truly successful, I think we need that to go with these kind of rollouts.
In 2021, Statistics Canada found that 1 in 5 adults in Canada did not have the insurance they needed to cover medication costs. The RCMP are investigating a man believed to be behind the theft of thousands of dollars worth of rental ski gear. A search warrant obtained by CBC News claims couriers were directed to pick up the stolen items. Jason Proctor has more.
So, back in December, staff at Whistler Blackcomb Rentals noticed something strange happening. A bunch of rental skis, poles and boots were not being returned, and when they went to check the bookings, they found the names they were booked with were aliases, and the credit cards used to secure the rentals were fraudulent. Something else they noticed by zooming in on some pictures posted online was that a lot of their stolen equipment was allegedly turning up on Facebook Marketplace, all of which sparked the investigation that is now laid out in this RCMP search warrant that we obtained from Vancouver Provincial Court. As it turned out, the booking details on all these stolen items appeared identical: age, weight, height, boot size. So using those details, staff in Whistler were able to flag a few suspicious upcoming transactions to police, who used the information to intercept and arrest 3 couriers in Whistler over the course of 3 days in December. They all allegedly told the investigators the same story. They'd been hired by someone through an ad on Chinese social media apps, offered gas money and a fee to drive up to Whistler, pose as skiers, and pick up this rental equipment that they were then supposed to drop off at this guy's home in Burnaby. So, according to this search warrant, RCMP in Burnaby then mounted an undercover sting, assigning an officer to contact this mysterious seller through Facebook Marketplace. They then met in the lobby of a condo building near Metrotown, where the officer gave the suspect $1,100 for a pair of skis and boots. So no one has been charged in the case, which is still under investigation, but according to court documents, the suspect was arrested in connection with a similar operation last spring that involved picking up a $50,000 bottle of liquor from an airport duty-free store. The guy told police he was hired through social media to carry out the job, which is how police believe he came up with the idea to hire others for this ski scam. Now, the suspect's Facebook Marketplace account is still live. I reached out to him for comment. He called it a private matter and told me to stop your story working immediately. I told him I wasn't asking for his permission. Jason Proctor, CBC News, Vancouver.
A look at the day that was in Revelstoke. Freight train making its way through the mountain city earlier in the day. Glorious sunshine showing hints of spring amid the somewhat melting snow. Darius has your BC-wide weather forecast coming up.
This is Vancouver is a new CBC podcast where we explore the issues, the stories, and the people that make this place home. Listen to This is Vancouver wherever you get your podcasts.
We have an update for you on a deadly crash on the Pattullo Bridge last month that left 3 people dead. The province wants to seize a vehicle that was allegedly involved in the events leading up to that deadly collision using the Civil Forfeiture Act. We spoke with the CBC's Jason Proctor earlier.
And I should say this was uploaded to Facebook. CBC has not been able to independently verify this footage, but it comes as we found about this lawsuit filed at BC Supreme Court by BC's Director of Civil Forfeiture against the driver of a vehicle who was allegedly involved in the moments leading up to this crash. So it's against the driver of a Tesla, and what the lawsuit claims is that the driver was either racing with or traveling alongside a Nissan Altima in the seconds before the Nissan slammed into this semi on the southbound lanes of the Pattullo Bridge on Valentine's Day. That was a horrific accident. It killed 3 people, left 1 person injured. And now the BC Director of Civil Forfeiture wants to seize that vehicle under proceeds of crime, claiming that that person has been arrested and released.
And what more do we know about the driver?
Yeah, so I was actually able to confirm with Surrey Police Service that the driver was arrested, as the lawsuit says, and released on February 26. He's 18. He's actually also facing other charges under the Motor Vehicle Act for another incident back in September involving driving with tinted windows and using an electronic device while driving. Those come before the courts later this month.
Okay, Jason Proctor, thanks very much.
Thank you.
The federal government has reached a deal with the provinces to let alcohol flow more freely across the country. The move is part of a host of changes to improve internal trade. As Olivia Stefanovich reports, the goal is to make Canada's economy more resilient against those U.S. tariffs.
Outside a liquor store in Ottawa, excitement is building over the possibility of getting more choice from other provinces.
I think it's a great idea. I think it should be encouraged.
It should have been done a long time ago. It's ridiculous. This is Canada.
Sometimes it takes a kick in the pants like we've just had.
In the face of U.S. tariffs, domestic trade barriers are coming down.
We have our elbows up because of 25% Trump tariffs, and we are all unified around the table. That is unprecedented.
The province is finally improving access to Canadian alcohol across the country.
We look forward to selling our wine to Ontarians and Quebecers and Nova Scotians and Newfoundlanders and the proud people of PEI. Right across the country, there's lots for them to enjoy here.
It would be a great thing if they did it. Do I believe that they'll do it? 5%.
Skepticism, though, remains. It's unclear if provinces will remove markups on Canadian booze from outside of their jurisdictions.
Why should I in BC be treated as a foreign winery in Alberta, Ontario, Quebec?
Or whether vintners will no longer be required to change their packaging when they sell in different markets.
The font must be this big, the label must say this, the alcohol must be in this position, the barcode must be this format.
In the coming weeks, the provinces are expected to hash out the fine details.
My optimism is palpable. The importance of this topic, of delivering up to $200 billion back to the Canadian economy, without going through Donald Trump, is incentive.
The federal, provincial, and territorial governments are also working towards a common credential recognition plan, so professionals in one part of the country can work in another part of Canada more easily. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
It's no secret American farmers and President Trump have long had a beef, if you will, with Canada's dairy supply management system, and the on-again, off-again U.S. tariffs have been leaving Canadian dairy farmers anxious. Kwabena Ojuro takes us to a dairy farm south of Montreal, where the farmers there have similar worries.
I'm at a dairy farm just outside Montreal, and they have 80 cows in the barn that I'm in right now. In total, this dairy farm has 160 cows. And I spoke to the owner, and he says that he will be affected by the tariffs, but primarily for the parts that they use. So one of the things that they do here, obviously, is they milk the cows twice a day. And the milking systems come to the cows, and then they go through this system. So this tubing goes straight into the milk tank, and guess where the parts come from? They come from the United States. So something like this is going to cost them money to repair if he has tariffs imposed on it. Other things are like engine motors and tires for tractors. I spoke to the owner and he told me that he spent $13,000 recently on a new set of tires for his tractor. And you add a 25% tariff on that, the cost gets even more expensive.
We grow our own feed, so to grow the feed we need fertilizer, we need seed. Almost all the seed comes from the United States. Some of the fertilizer comes from the United States, so that will have a pretty big impact on our cost of production. It's the whole country that's going to be affected, especially the grain sector and the vegetable and the greenhouse sector will be affected as well because we export a lot of that. The best thing would be no tariffs, but at least if we can retrieve the tariffs on the key products, on the main products we use here, that would be a relief for us.
So farmers that I spoke to also say that it's very hard to prepare for the uncertainty that is coming. They don't know how they're going to prepare, but they say that they will be ready in some way, shape, or form. Another thing that's happening with the farmers is that they're hoping that if there is a reprieve or any type of reprieve, that will help them out. And they're just hoping that tariffs won't affect the agriculture and food industry that much. Cubino Duro, CBC News, Saint-Blaise-sur-Richelieu, Quebec.
Even when the American tariffs were just a threat, some Canadian consumers were making efforts to buy Canadian and boycott U.S. products. It turns out some businesses are as well. The CBC's Melissa Francois has that story.
Same thing as Elon Musk. We're making cuts against American products. And I'm gonna do the Elon Musk move, yay!
John Gumbly manages several bars, restaurants, and events in Montreal. He showed us the products clients will no longer find at one of his venues.
This is Yoko Luna. Like I said, we have 9 venues, so this is only a portion of it, but it's a lot of wine from the California region, Tito's, their handmade vodka, 11, which is a vodka produced out of Miami from the Club 11, Angel's Envy, which is a bourbon.
All those bottles are heading back to the Provincial Liquor Board. Gumbly's efforts, part of a wider movement of Canadians choosing to buy local, boycott American products, or make their pride heard a bit louder, and plenty of businesses are joining in.
My whole idea here is that Canada has to stand strong. We have to unite from small businesses, from individuals, to big businesses, to corporations, and we have to find ways to fight back and slowly develop independence.
At this cafe in Beaconsfield, owners made a subtle change to be part of that movement. The traditional Americano has a new name.
So we wanted to, without getting too political, have fun with the idea and switch our name from Americano to the Canadiano to really show how we support, and we're trying to support our community.
Beyond products and prices, some businesses worry, though, that these changes might have side effects. For Gumbly, it's the American customers visiting his venues.
So are they going to come in the same numbers with the animosity that's in the air? Because what they're being fed is that we're kind of the enemy. Is tourism going to drop significantly? I believe so.
But for now, Gumbly says what's important is to send the right message as long as the trade war goes on. Melissa Francois, CBC News, Montreal.
The federal government is working to bring home a BC teenager stuck behind bars in Poland after he admitted to spying for Russia. His mother believes he was lured to occupied Ukraine and recruited by Russian agents. Jonathan Gatehouse has exclusive details.
Yeah, it's hard. You can't do anything for your kid.
The worry comes in waves for Andelaine Nelson. She'd only recently reconnected with her son, Laken Pavin, marveling at how her little boy had become a lanky Army reservist. Then he went backpacking in Europe, and Nelson received an earth-shattering call.
I was told that Laken had been arrested and charged with espionage.
Polish court files say Pavin went from Vancouver to Moscow and then Russian-occupied Ukraine last April to volunteer for an aid organization. Instead, he ended up being recruited by Russian intelligence. On May 21st, he landed in Warsaw with orders to spy on the Polish military. His espionage career ended hours later, after he got drunk in a hotel bar and confessed to police. He's now serving a 20-month sentence.
He turned himself in. He doesn't belong in a Polish jail.
Lawyer John Phillips is advising the family.
This was a troubled kid. He came from a broken home. He was 17 and being manipulated.
The family says CSIS and the RCMP had Lakin on their radar before he left. Neither agency would confirm or deny that.
This is exactly the failing of the Canadian system and the Canadian intelligence and police network. They should have shut this down in Canada, but instead he's now suffering in a prison.
This intelligence expert says Russia is recruiting more spies than ever before, choosing quantity over quality.
Russia places very little value on the people that it recruits. It treats the assets with as little value as it treats its own conscripts. They are disposable.
It's not clear if Pavin was targeted for his military ties. The RCMP and multiple government agencies declined to answer questions about the case. What we do know is Global Affairs is talking to Polish authorities and that his family hopes Lakin will be home soon. Jonathan Gatehouse, CBC News, Toronto.
Ever wonder what happens to the mountains of garbage we create in Metro Vancouver each year? Well, the authority is going to tell us how some of it is handled. Stay with us. Earlier this week, our medical columnist, Dr. Melissa Lem, spoke about a call to stop burning consumer waste at an incineration facility in Burnaby. Health Canada warns burning household waste is the biggest producer of dioxins, a chemical compound known to cause cancer and reproductive problems in humans. Here's Dr. Lem speaking on behalf of the Canadian Physicians for the Environment BC earlier. Remind us, what are dioxins and how do they affect us?
Well, dioxins are generated when we burn substances that contain carbon and chlorine, and they're part of this overall umbrella of chemicals known as persistent organic pollutants. And the reason is that they accumulate and last in the environment and our bodies when we're exposed to them. And the problem is that when we're exposed to them, they can lead to all kinds of different health issues like immune function issues, liver dysfunction, and certain kinds of cancer.
So the waste-to-energy plant is operated by Metro Vancouver, and its general manager of solid waste services, Paul Henderson, is here now. And we appreciate your time, Paul. Thanks for coming in. So Metro Vancouver is in the midst, I understand, of planning its next regional waste management plan. And we heard from Kate, BC, suggesting waste burning is costly not only to Metro Vancouver's budget, but also people's health. How do you respond to what you heard from Dr. Lem?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for having me on the show. And I just want to give you a little bit of background about what Metro Vancouver does. So Metro Vancouver is responsible for waste reduction and recycling planning. And as you know, we're working on a new solid waste management plan. And our real priority, which aligns with the work at CAPE and Zero Waste BC, is around waste reduction and recycling. Saying that, there's still a lot of garbage that needs to be disposed of, even though we have a 65% recycling rate, which is more than twice the Canadian average and North American leading. Part of the system that manages that residual garbage is Metro Vancouver's waste-to-energy facility that's located in Burnaby. That facility has been operating since 1988, and it's a safe and cost-effective way to manage residual garbage. And we speak to emissions, so specifically dioxin emissions. So the facility is regulated under a provincial operational certificate that sets limits for a whole range of parameters, including dioxins and furans. And the data from our monitoring program, it's available on the Metro Vancouver website, reported to multiple agencies, looking specifically at dioxins and furans. The levels that we monitor at that facility are dramatically below those regulatory limits, and in fact, typically not detectable. So the suggestion that the waste-to-energy facility is creating health impacts it's a dated perception with respect to waste-to-energy facilities. Facilities that are designed and operated today do not create a health risk to the public or people working in the vicinity of any waste-to-energy facility, particularly ours.
Yeah, but just to clarify, or how would you respond to a medical doctor saying that this facility ought to be transitioned out simply because, and I asked her about proximity, that it was still a concern, particularly because of those dioxins?
Yeah, and I think you quoted in a reference, a Health Canada reference with respect to the sources of dioxins and furans. And unfortunately, some of the information that's available, including that reference, are dated, incorrect. Historically, there were problems with waste-to-energy facilities around emissions related to dioxins and furans. But today, waste-to-energy facilities, the way they're designed and operated, are specifically designed in order to prevent dioxins and furans entering the environment. And that's typical. Our facility is typical of the facilities around the world.
And as you move on the next phases of the waste management plan, what is the future of the waste-to-energy facility? Do you see it being phased out?
The waste-to-energy facility I mentioned, it's a cost-effective, so compared to other options we have for disposing of waste, there's a local landfill that it's about the same cost as the waste-to-energy facility. The alternative is shipping garbage to faraway landfills, and that's about twice as expensive as operating the waste-to-energy facility. And given it's a safe, cost-effective facility, we have no plans to shut that facility down. Our real priority with respect to a new solid waste management plan is reducing waste. That's our key priority.
And also, just to clarify, how much power does it actually create, this waste-to-energy facility?
Yeah, the waste-to-energy facility, the primary goal, or the primary reason to have the waste-to-energy facility is to manage garbage. But in addition, it generates electricity, and it generates enough electricity for about 16,000 homes. And we're currently working on a number of projects that are they're called district energy projects, which will allow it to create enough energy to power 50,000 homes. So in addition to the 16,000 homes that are currently powered. So it's a
Yeah, and when is the timeline for that to be able to ramp up to 50,000 or 60,000 homes?
Yeah, well, currently it's 16,000 homes generating electricity for 16,000 homes. The ramp up to the additional 50,000 homes is over a number of years, basically as the system is built out in the community around the waste energy facility.
Okay, Paul Henderson from Metro Vancouver. We appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Time for our BC-wide weather forecast with Darius Madavi, who's going to start with Australia.
Yes, we've got a tropical cyclone, which is just the term for a hurricane in this part of the world, that is approaching the East Coast. And this is very unusual. This hasn't happened in over 50 years, a half century, since Brisbane in this area has been affected by a tropical cyclone like this, packing wind gusts up to 155 kilometers per hour and expected to drop 500 to 700 millimeters of rain in some of these areas. And you can see all that moisture being captured there, being just held in this hurricane. And you can also see just the sheer size of this, 850 kilometers from end to end, affecting all the way down to Sydney and then north of Brisbane. Here you can see that rain that is going to be coming down as well. And we're the sort of timeline for this tropical cyclone making landfall has been being pushed back and back because it's sort of been sitting in the same place for quite a long time. But now it's expected around midday tomorrow, which is early morning our time. So keep an eye on that into tomorrow. And let's turn back to us here in BC, where we do have a bit of a system of our own coming in, this atmospheric river that is coming in. But again, low-level atmospheric river, good moisture for the province, but there will be some heavy rain at times over the next few days. So be aware of that. Currently hitting the north coast and working its way down south. The west coast of the island and the Sunshine Coast expected to be hit particularly hard. You can see that here, running through when that rain is expected to arrive tomorrow around midday for the most part for the west coast of the island, and then it probably going to return to a lesser extent on Sunday. Fortunately, the brunt of this sort of fire hose of moisture isn't focused on the same place all the way through the weekend. It's sort of spread out a bit. The north shore of Metro Vancouver could get a fair amount as well. We'll look at those totals in a second. First, I want to show you that it's not just the coast that's getting this. The interior, especially along the Rockies, is also going to get a pretty good dump of snow, maybe around 40 centimeters of snow there at the most. Here for the Coast Mountains, could be as much as 80 to 100 centimeters of snow for some of those highest peaks. But unfortunately, snow levels will be high enough that the local mountains will probably be seeing a mix of rain and snow. So let's zoom in here. This is our precipitation, both rain and snow included here. And you can see very high totals for the west coast of the island and pretty high totals for the north shore of Metro Vancouver as well. But again, that's spread over a weekend, so nothing too concerning as of now. Local flooding is possible, though. Overall, temperatures are staying pretty mild over the next few days, maybe dropping early next week. Our conditions across the province tomorrow, we do have some of that precipitation really starting to come in, but also plenty of sunshine, especially down in the southern interior. We're going to stay pretty dry, except for in the southeast and up on those peaks. And here's our 5-day forecast. Dan, get ready for that rain. It's going to be worse on Saturday.
No kidding.
Tapering off a bit on Sunday.
Just in time for the weekend. We'll live. Thanks, Darius.
Thank you.
An all-Canadian team of scientists has been hard at work in Antarctica this week, collecting samples from the Southern Ocean in their quest to better understand climate change. CBC News has a front-row seat as they conduct their research. Susan Ormiston reports from onboard HMCS Margaret Brooke.
Every day, suit up,
Give me a little further.
load up, and don't forget any piece of equipment.
Well, I've got 5 bottles, 5 glaciers.
The scientists are headed out to the glaciers, lowered in a Navy boat turned research craft, to measure what's changing in the ocean at the bottom of the world. We're going with them. Antarctica helps regulate the global climate, but sea ice is melting to near record lows. February had abnormally warm temperatures, which over time affects everything in the ocean ecology.
We've seen a ton of penguins today. Hopefully there'll be some penguin DNA in there, some whale DNA.
Jenny Tolman is capturing DNA in water samples. But her expertise is the smallest of organisms.
Microbes are the little engines of the ocean. They're also the things they respond the most quickly to change, and the poles are a very rapidly changing place.
Collecting seawater can be tricky work. Tia Anderlini is studying trace metals, maneuvering a long pole to grab uncontaminated samples.
I was using a really long pole, basically to avoid contamination from the boat itself.
Woohoo! And sometimes things just happen.
Ooh, I dropped it.
plastic lid slipped into the ocean. Not ideal.
Can you look over and see if there's a cap floating under the boat?
Everyone looks for it, and within minutes, the cap reappears. Fished out successfully with an oar. Glaciers are retreating in the Antarctic Peninsula more rapidly than before.
The time is 17:13, and the depth is 51 meters.
One way to measure what's going on is grabbing sediment from the sea floor. Jeremy Bentley lets down a large claw to the depths and then hand over hand hauls it back up to deliver a muddy mass. There are clues here, and with deeper cores, about glacial history.
We're looking at changes over time.
Including human imprint, like any evidence of microplastics.
It's like a Christmas day for me with a good sediment sample.
A good bit of mud.
Yes.
Most of the samples will go back to Canada to analyze and share. There's more ambition than time. It's so rare to get here. The challenge is worth it.
It's a great day for samples from glaciers from here.
1, 2, 3.
You got everybody? Day's end, it's back to the mothership with a bit of Antarctic scientific treasure to advance our understanding of what's happening to our climate. Susan Ormiston, CBC News in Admiralty Bay, Antarctica.
They're very small, cute, and Lord, they're woolly. And they just might be the first tool in a U.S. company's de-extinction kit. We'll explain after this.
So I know when I really like a song, if within the first 3 seconds, I'm already vibing to it.
Hey, I'm Rohith Joseph. Vibin' is the new show all about discovering great new songs and fresh artists from across BC and beyond.
It's not one person dictating what good music is, it's the community sharing what good music is.
Stream Vibin' on CBC Listen.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and this is your CBC Inbox.
Check out CBC News BC, your local streaming channel. It's a free ad-supported TV channel that's available 24/7, delivering breaking news, including weather updates, daily headlines, and sharing stories that matter to British Columbians. Stream your favorite CBC programs like The Early Edition, BC Today, and On the Coast. CBC News BC is available on Roku, LG, and Samsung smart devices.
An American company is on a quest to bring back extinct animals.
But they are starting small.
Okay.
So not those big, scary dinosaurs like in Jurassic Park, which I just rewatched, and it holds up. Not the science, but dinosaurs. Think way, way small.
Colossal Biosciences is the world's first de-extinction and species preservation company. And on the path to bring back some of these iconic species like the dodo, the Tasmanian tiger, and the mammoth, we need to invent a lot of new technologies that can also help conservation. So we actually engineered a mouse equivalent of mammoth genes that we've identified on our quest to bring back the mammoth into mice in a healthy way and produced what we believe is cold-tolerant, woolly, phenotype-driven mice. We believe it's better to have a de-extinction toolkit and not need it than need a de-extinction toolkit and not have it.
We know that ecosystems that are more biodiverse are more robust and resilient. And we hope that by reestablishing these interactions, by protecting species from becoming extinct, we will protect and preserve biodiversity that will help stabilize ecosystems and stop the loss of species today.
They are hairy. So he said dodo, Tasmanian tiger, or mammoth. If they want to bring back, they've got to start small. Do you have a preference for those three?
I'm going to go with dodo because of those three, it's the only one that's actually a dinosaur. Because birds are dinosaurs.
Captain Science.
Yeah. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, YouTube, and our website.
And we will have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National. No dodos, though. Good night.